Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Tales podcast. And today we have Jeff Smith from Houston, Texas, here to talk about his start in real estate and how he got to where he is now and how to also get really, really good at the very hard skill that is really necessary in our business to be able to scale and close more deals. But more on that later. For now, Jeff, how are you, my brother?
Doing great. I actually just got out of a presentation. It was a brokerage of a bunch of realtors, and we were
Okay.
talking about creative deals. So, scrambled over here as fast as I could. So sorry for being
Awesome.
late, but yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no worries. So you were with a group of realtors, and were you part of their continued education, or how? What was the presentation like?
So what's been happening is that a lot of realtors are receiving offers of subject to and seller, all these things. And so what happened is they reach out to the title company escrow people and say, what the hell is all of this stuff? And so the escrow officer and I have a real good relationship. And so she said, hey, why don't you come with me? Because I'll tell them the technical aspects and you can tell the stories of the people you've worked with so that they understand this is real and what's happening. And
I love
so,
that.
yeah, we've been doing that a few times. It's been fun.
Awesome. That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, we'll get to that a little bit later. I want to start right now with my first question. I just want to take it all the way back, right? So, first off, how did you find out about real estate? What were you doing at that time, and what eventually led you to actually get started in taking action in real estate and wholesale?
Yeah. So before I was working in the oil and gas world. I was a site project engineer and I got into the proposal groups. We were dealing with very large contracts, like 9-digit contracts. These were not small things, which is fine. I was good at it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work. We were really making some cool stuff. And after a few years in the Middle East, I came back to the US. I was working in this group and I said, I feel like I have more in the tank and I feel like I want to be building something, right? Because going to work every day and we're doing cool stuff, but I feel like I need to build my own thing. And over time, I started tinkering with different things and then found real estate. Ended up buying a couple of fourplexes. We did a fix and flip, and it was all fine. But I feel like we were kind of tinkering with it. And then one point we had gotten a virtual assistant. She was cold calling. She finds this probate lead and this is the deal that changed everything, changed a lot of my mindset. But basically, long story short, we ended up closing a $200,000 assignment fee deal.
That's incredible.
It was wild.
Yeah. Awesome. So, and was that your very first? Was that your very first like wholesale deal? Was it 200K rep?
No, that would have been, no, this was not our first, this was not our first wholesale deal or closing. But
Hmm.
this is really what got me so obsessed about learning sales and how to communicate is because the moral of this story is I knew what the seller wanted, I knew what the buyer wanted, and I had no idea how to close them properly. And I felt trapped. And I said,
Mm,
never again will I not understand how to deal with this.
gotcha. Wow. Okay. And to take it back to when you were still working in oil and gas industry, you mentioned you were in the Middle East. What was that experience like traveling abroad and being in that environment? Where were you in the Middle East? Just out of curiosity, because I'm Middle Eastern. It's good to know.
Yeah, I was in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
We were on the East Coast. It's the industrial city called Jubail. For
Yep.
those of you who don't know that geography, you have Jubail, Dammam, Al Khobar, and they're kind of all in a line. And it's a very desolate region. It's very hard to live there, but this is the industrial area where a lot of the refineries are. And so that's where I was living for about 3 years. And, I'd get to take trips to Europe and stuff. But,
Mm,
um, long story short, um, I'm in a man camp with 500 guys, and I've never been more lonely in my life. It was a very hard experience. So that's why, glad to get back home. There are a lot of good experiences from that. I met some amazing people out there. I really understood a lot more about, because there's a dozen cultures converging in one spot. The
yeah.
Arabs, the Pakistanis, the Filipinos, the list goes on and on and on. So it was a neat experience, but it was a very challenging part of life.
Would you say that? in that experience you had in the Middle East, did it open your mind to, I guess, more of the possibilities of life? Because I've noticed that with myself, whenever I travel, even if it's for work, right, whether I'm going somewhere domestically or even if I'm going internationally, just having that time to really see how uh, open the world is, and not just in your closed office all day, like how, I spend most of my time, honestly, and I'm sure you're the same. You have that time, and you had an extended period of time, for your work specifically at that time. What would you speak to getting out of your, guess, your traditional place where you're used to working or used to just being, and seeing the world in that way?
I think there was a couple of things. One is, if you're just in your American bubble, you don't understand how other people think. You really don't understand their values, what they think is important, what they don't think is important. So, for example, like a lot of the American dream is I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm going to leave and start my own family and do my own thing. And this is great. This is the whole kind of independence thing. You can grow and be whatever you want to be. That's the essence. In more the Eastern cultures, like the Indians, Arabs, all those guys, it's more of family is the priority, right? Where they stick together for the long haul. So you can have four generations in the same household, and that is prized, right? So, it's kind of, it's just interesting to see what things are valued by different groups.
Hmm.
Um, and so, getting to understand how they think and how the different countries even interact and kind of what they feel about each other. Because again, we kind of have our American, well, I think this way, therefore everyone else does. And this is completely wrong. Um, but, traveling around that part of the world, traveling to Europe, traveling to other places, the other major thing that it did for me is it gave me a very large appreciation for what we do have in the States. And certainly no one's going to say our country's perfect, and no one's arguing that. But when you've been to some other places and seen some rough part of the world, and you've seen how other people interact with each other, you come back here and now you have something to compare it against.
Yeah.
And I think those were the big lessons I took, and
Yeah.
how to communicate with people who don't think like you, who don't share your same language, who don't share the same backgrounds or whatever.
Hmm. I 100% agree. I mean, when I finished school, my parents took me to Iraq for 3 months for that exact same reason that you just mentioned, and I couldn't agree with you more. From staying there for an extended period of time to coming back here to the States gives you a tremendous appreciation for what we do have, and understand that what we complain about in this country is a blessing in other countries. Um,
Yeah, the problems that other peoples around the world are experiencing would blow the average American citizen's mind a hundred
yeah.
times over.
I couldn't say it better, man. Absolutely, absolutely. And so when you got back to the States, you were kind of finicking with real estate, as you said, right? You were buying a couple fourplexes, and so how did you get to the point? Because when you said you got a cold caller, I assume if you bought a cold caller or hired a cold caller, you're in your mind you were projecting towards growing this as a business. So what got you how did you get started with actually trying to scale out or build out, a system or a business within real estate, and leading up to that, what you just mentioned, that huge potential assignment fee?
Yeah. So what was going on was, the only way you can get people to go work in that tough environment in the petrochemical plant for 6 days a week, 10-hour days, and just bust your butt is you pay them an insane amount of money. It's the only way you
Yeah.
can get people to go out there. So I came back with a nice little treasure chest of money. And, as I was starting to buy properties, it just, after house number two, you go, wow, if I got to throw down all these down payments, I'm going to be pretty limited pretty fast. I should probably find other deals besides the MLS. And so that's where starting up the cold calling came from, to just do fix and flip and wholesales. And I really hadn't even stumbled across creative financing just yet, but that's where that was going.
Awesome, awesome. And so, how long were you cold calling, or having your cold caller call until you got your first deal? And were you cold calling at all, or did you just immediately delegate it to a cold caller?
No, I started out cold calling myself. I would come home at lunch and I
Okay.
would hit the dialer for about an hour because I wanted to understand how to do this and see if I could even get it. And I
Hmm.
remember, I'm a sales coach now, and what I tell everybody, like, I was literally shaking after an hour of this. Like, it was so tense and so nervous.
Yeah.
Probably after about 3 months of that, I said, okay, this was fun, but I can't, I'm not getting enough traction with 1 hour a day. I'm going to hire a caller to just generate leads for me to talk to when I come home in the evenings.
Awesome. Awesome. And then how long did it take for you to get that very first wholesale deal?
It actually took a pretty long time. I think I almost want to say it was 4 or 5, maybe even 6 months of cold caller working before enough leads, before the right opportunity showed
Mhm.
up. And it wasn't that deal that I'm talking about with the big 200 ripper. It was something else.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so what did you learn on your very first deal as far as wholesale? Because you were doing deals, I heard you said on the MLS first, right? That's where you're buying and holding most of the properties that you were doing, and then you decided to go the off market route. What was some of those things that you learned? I know you mentioned, the anxiety you had when you were first cold calling. If you want to shed some light on that more, that'd be great. But what else was going on that you learned as a lesson in that period of time?
Well, I mean, one's the importance of following up. So if you think about just the nature of marketing, if you're doing outbound marketing, it's simply the idea of you're contacting somebody who's just thinking about it. And so the
Yeah.
length of time to follow up until they're ready to go is it's a long time, especially
Yep.
like probates. Okay? It can take a year.
Yep.
When we did the switch later on to inbound marketing, they've already thought about thinking about it, they've thought about it, and now they've taken an action to reach out. So it's a very different dynamic.
Hmm.
So
Right.
those
It's
were
like.
some of the first lessons. And then the other lesson that I learned in that initial part was how bad I suck at this.
Were you that bad?
I was terrible on the phone. Well, the problem was it's not that I can't speak to somebody,
Right.
it's that I don't know what questions to ask them. And
Right.
all I keep getting, people just shouting from the rooftops, well, if you don't know the motivation, keep asking questions. And I would scream back, what questions am I supposed to be asking? This script sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I was the same way because I got started cold calling myself too. And different side than you. I called for a year before I did anything as far as hiring it out and systemizing it. So, that whole time, this was before I invested into any mentorship, before there was really like any sort of mentorship that I knew of that taught this type of stuff. It was, man, it was brutal, and it had that same I had that same issue, which is like I didn't really know what to say. I mean, after the first month or so, I was kind of just like winging it. I mean, I had like this like PD this image saved to my phone of stuff, the questions to ask, but they weren't enough. They were just the first question. But once you get into a deeper conversation, you really don't know what to say, right? They just say build rapport. Well, okay, I mean, asking their favorite color isn't really going to help you get the sale. So what do you mean by that? So it took me a while to really understand those things, and I've had experience with inbound leads, and I agree with that statement that you mentioned there. And when was this whole thing going on? Like that start in uh generating off market leads, getting that first wholesale deal? When was this?
So, I really started tinkering with real estate in 2017. That's when we were chasing the MLS listings. And it was probably more 2019 where we really started to hunt for
Hmm.
off-market deals.
Got you. Okay. And so then you had done your very first wholesale deal, and then how was the journey of going from that point, getting multiple deals and scaling to doing multiple deals per month after that? Because I know that's a whole different beast than trying to get your very first deal.
It is, and it was a long journey. That was not the ads that you see where it's like, I joined this mentorship and I made a crap load of money like in the first month. Like, these are the outliers. That is not the norm. Can it happen? Absolutely. 100% it can happen. The question is that the median? No, of course not, because that doesn't sell exactly. So, it still took a couple of years before we could see some consistent deal flow. So, but yeah, going from maybe one deal a quarter or maybe two deals a year to doing multiple deals a month, now we're doing about 1 to 3 deals a week.
Yeah.
That's a very different thing where you just start having other problems within your business. Now you have to systematize it. Now you need teammates. You really can't handle this as a one person show,
Huh.
unless you have a consistent process that you follow. You can't wing it every
Right.
time.
I agree. I agree. And I know you are a sales coach. So throughout this time when, going from first deal to now you're doing, 1 to 3 deals a week, that equals out to be about 4 to 12 deals a month, which that's some serious deal flow. When did the when did you start getting a real either passion for sales or understanding like the importance of the skill of having good sales, being able to close on the phones?
But when I had that situation, here was the story, and it's on my YouTube channel. There was a probate lead. It was a cold call lead. My VA reached out to this person, and he was explaining that he wanted to sell this house. It was sitting on an acre of land, and all the wholesalers were lowballing him because, frankly, nobody was doing flips in this area. It just wasn't happening. There were no comps to go after, so they were all basically offering him, half of what he was asking for just to see if he would do it. And I took a look at this thing, and I remember an old seminar I had gone to where they said, when you see pieces of land, sometimes you need to find a builder or a developer. And here's how you go find them. So I looked on the MLS, and I'll be darned, like within a par five, down the road, there's some guy building townhouses. So I call him up, say, hey, would you be interested in buying land in this area? He said, no. Okay. Call up the second guy, wouldn't even take my call. Call up the third guy. Hey, would you be interested in buying? I said, absolutely, we'd love to buy it. Okay, cool. Well, how much would you pay for it? And he gave me a number. And I looked at my notes and I said, wait a second. The seller is asking $180,000. The developer just quoted me $7 per square foot. This is sitting on 1 acre. $7 times 43,560 square feet per acre. Oh my God, he just offered me 320 grand.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I called the seller back and I said, hey man, funny story. I just noticed that the adjacent acre has the same last name as you. Who is that? He said, oh, that's my cousin, and he wants to sell for 180,000 also. Now I'm staring at a potential $250,000 deal. And I realize in this moment, I have no idea what to do next. I had no confidence in my ability to close. Like, probably for some people listening, you're like, Jeff, don't you just send them the contracts? Like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to send my contract. He's just going to shop it around because there's a couple other wholesalers wandering around out there. How do I secure this thing and make sure he doesn't wander off? And I didn't know how to push this thing to the point where he would even say, yeah, I just fell apart. And so I scrambled as fast as I could. I signed up for a little sales mentorship real fast. I just had to know how to do this. And it was such a stressful moment until I got this deal signed up. And then that was after that, I was like, I am going to learn how to ask questions right. I'm going to learn how to close because I never want to feel this ever again. And so that was the origin story. And we
That
closed
is
it.
that is incredible. What that reminds me of is a saying that I've heard recently, and I'm sure you've heard it too. Is that as human beings, we don't learn or do things when we want to do them. We do them when we have to do them, or something along those lines. I probably
Yeah.
butchered it, but I mean, you know where I'm coming from. It's you have this incredible opportunity, and it would suck if this just fell through your hands only because you didn't have the necessary skills to do it. And so then you did it. You did the thing, and you ended up cashing in an awesome check. That's incredible.
And it was not the last 6-digit check we ever did either. And it was because I understood sales and solving problems. And the way I teach people is I say, stop thinking about sales and doing real estate negotiation like a car salesman. It's not about what you want. It's about finding out the problems that the seller is having and then presenting solutions that solve those problems. Like everybody wants, like, I want to buy subject to, I want to buy subject to. Yeah, does that solve the seller's problem? No, that solves your problem. They need a cash deal, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Right. And from your experience with sales and training salespeople, are you are you big on scripts and more of a sales process, or are you really teaching just the fundamental soft skills of good communication?
So most of my secret sauce comes from a book called Spin Selling by Neil Rackham.
Okay.
And it basically reads like a research paper. It's actually like, if you're not an engineer, this is a painful book to read. But me, I am an engineer. I love it because it's all data driven, all this other stuff. But this guy studied tons of sales calls and reported findings. I loved it. But yeah, if you hated chemistry, you will hate this book. It's got kind of thesis paper. But anyway, um, the way I coach people is I say, look, there is a framework you want to go through. And there are some scripts that are useful because you do want to have kind of a destination in mind you're trying to get to. Use the script as a checklist rather than something you recite, right? Because the seller didn't get a copy of the script. But here's the way I talk about it. I go, guys, what we really got to dive into is your questions suck, and we need to make them not suck. Here's what most people do. Imagine you go into a doctor's office, and the first thing you got to fill out is what's your height, what's your weight, are you on medication, are you pregnant, have you been around this country, have you been around these animals, and you go, what does this have to do with my broken bone sticking out of my arm? It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with it, right? And then the doctor comes in and finally asks you the hard questions. What seems to be the problem today? How long has this been going on? Where else is this affecting you? Are there any other concerns you have that I need to specifically address? Is there any other activities that you feel has been impacted? These diagnostic questions is what you need to be doing. And most salespeople are not taught to think that way. And then they don't know how to phrase the question to find out the motivation and the pain points. That is how you close. You find the problems and you bring a solution that solves the problems that the seller told you.
And I love that, first of all. I absolutely love that. And I 100% agree with that. I think that goes so the opposite direction of what is traditionally taught in traditional sales jobs, not just in real estate, but just in any sort of sales environment. My the question that I wanted to ask was, how does somebody even like know the right question to ask, or I guess like how do they take the information that the seller is telling them and actually phrase it in a question that's actually going to help move the sale forward, and not get it to the point where I should make this difference here, the where the seller just starts getting non-committal and just feels your question's boring and I've already answered this, or I'm already telling you. Like, how does somebody really go deep into like the impact of a seller's story, a seller's motivation, without getting that roadblock, that, oh, I'm not going that deep with you, type of feel.
Right. Well, again, think about it this way. Most people get stuck here because they feel like they're being nosy.
Yeah.
They feel like it's inappropriate. And again, I refer back to the doctor analogy because we can all refer back to it. Do you want the doctor just asking you simple questions like, hey, how are you feeling? Oh, you have a cough? Okay, well, let me just give you some Tylenol. We're done here. Nobody wants this. They want the hard questions because they want to feel like the person they're working with understands what they're dealing with. So, one, anybody listening, give yourself permission. You must ask the hard questions. The seller wants you to. Second, the way you ask hard questions is, remember, try to avoid the fact-finding questions. It's not about the bed and bath count. It's not about the square footage of the house. A lot of times it's not about the condition of the property at all. You need to ask questions that are about the emotional aspects of the seller.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of cheat codes you can do to make this work. So think of it this way. Here's the example I'm going to give you. Let's pretend for a second we were selling home security systems. I use this analogy constantly. 3 questions I'm going to ask you. Very different responses. They sound almost identical. Listen to them. Is the home security system you have affecting your bottom line? How much is the home security system affecting your bottom line? Are you concerned that the home security system is affecting your bottom line? Does it affect me? Yep, it affects me. No doubt about it. How much is it affecting you? About $100 a month. Are you concerned about it? No, it's the best $100 I ever spent. Very different responses, but if you were trying to sell this and you'd realize they're not concerned about the price point. There's something else bothering them. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. So in the same way, the way I teach people is like, oh, look, here's your cheat code. Start asking them, what is the concern? What is the challenge? What is the obstacle? What is the hurdle? What are you dissatisfied with about the current situation? And get their emotional impression to tell you what they don't like. And what do you want to see happen? What would make the future easier for you? If we could do these things, is that what you need to advance to the next spot? And that's the other secret sauce is you as the salesman, you have to understand how to advance this conversation forward through the process to the decision. It's not about being pushy. It's just knowing what the next step is. So if I'm working what I think is going to be a sub two, I know I got to get the mortgage statement. I know I got to find out if there's other decision makers, and I need them and me to know where they're going after this. Otherwise, I can't present a solution. So when you start putting that path together, now you can close deals.
I love that, and I've learned from the one of the OG sales trainers, John Martinez, and he taught about PIP, right? Some people call it SIP for situation, but I learned that as PIP, right? Problem, impact, picture perfect. And he talked about building that bridge, and it's exactly what you're talking about. And what I also want to talk about, and I was going to say this, but then you brought it up, and I thought it was incredible. Was you asked the question at the end of those three questions regarding the home security systems was the are you concerned about it? And I was gonna mention that question brings out a lot of emotion out of the prospects because you got the two facts out of them, right? That's more logical thinking right there. But then you ask them, are they concerned about it? Now, if someone's concerned about something, it's obviously dealing with something that is emotional to them. And I heard of a study, and I don't know the exact multiplier that is used, but the logical brain can only make a decision with only X amount of brain power. But the emotional side of the brain, I don't know if you've heard this too, can make a decision and I think like 1,000 times more brain power than what the logical brain can do. And the analogy that I heard with this is that imagine if you were going to the grocery store and just checking out some whatever grocery you're buying. You're going to make your decisions based on the price. If you're looking at, I don't know, milk, right? Which milk is the cheapest? Oh, it's the same milk that I want. Cool. This one's cheaper. I'm going to buy this one. But imagine that now you have your loved one is kidnapped and you need to go get $1 million in cash for them to be freed. You're going to think of whatever possible way to get that money you can to get them to save your loved one. Why? Because that is a more of an emotional response. With logic, if it's logical, it's just looking at facts. But when it's emotional, you are at a way you're forced into a way higher level of thinking and fast decision making. So I absolutely love what you just said there.
I mean, there's also something to be said that, so yeah, I think I've heard something similar, but the other thing is if you ask only logic-based questions, it doesn't actually tell you what the problem is. Think of
Yeah,
it this way. It's a foreclosure lead. How far behind are you in payments? $10,000. Can the seller do it? Are they worried about it? Can they get the money from? Like it tells you literally nothing other than
yeah.
a fact. You have to find out what they're worried about. Otherwise, they won't work with you. And you can't show the value you're offering.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And so then talk to me about your business today in your real estate business. I know you mentioned you got your deal volume that you guys are doing. You guys are doing, multiple deals per month and per week. What type of strategy are you guys focusing on more? Are you guys doing mostly wholesale? Are you guys doing more creative finance or fix and flips? Talk to me about what's going on in your business in the present day.
We are primarily doing fix and flips in the city of Houston. We
Okay.
will take down creative deals. And, I was telling this folks, the realtors, like 75% of my deals are cash, which means 1 out of 4 only are creative, subject to renovations.
Mm.
So, again, think of it in terms of the doctor. I only prescribe what the patient actually needs in order to be cured, right? So a lot of our deals we're doing, I'd say it's almost 50-50 as far as if we assign them or we rehab them ourselves. No particular rhyme or reason. If it's in a certain zip code and it's a rental market, a landlord's going to want that one. I don't need to flip it. If it's in another area where you just don't see a lot of that, we're going to take on the work ourselves. And the other part of our business that I'm really excited to get started again, I had put this on ice for a pretty long time, is our land development business. Not that we actually develop it, but we go seek out those plots of land and then either assign it to, or we'll partner in a way with a developer to, build a community. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Like I love mud and dirt.
I've had this conversation with somebody else here on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and they mentioned that same thing, that they were getting into land. What's the craze about land? I've done a couple land deals, and they're fun, but what made you decide to jump back into land? I know you had a big assignment fee, but what else, if there's anything?
Right. Well, the thing with land is it also depends on who the buyers are. So when we were chasing after it, we had a couple of very large deals, like 7-digit deals. They had gotten really huge. The problem was when the interest rates and bond rates went up, those deals all imploded, which hurt a lot. So we had to put the whole business on ice for a little bit. The thing that makes land nice is that one, you don't really have to haggle about repairs and, do we have tenants there and, what does the roof look like? Because nobody cares. It's a plot of dirt. It's also very easy to scale a deal like that, right? Kind of like how people talk about, well, scale the deal from one single family and then you go to multifamily. It's the same type of thing. You've just added zeros onto it. It's a lot easier to do that with land. The parts of it that make it difficult to handle is that there really aren't it's difficult. It's very hard. It's harder to find the volume because, there's tons of houses in Houston. It's easier to find buyers for that. It
Yeah.
can be more difficult in certain areas to find buyers for land, especially if it's out in the middle of nowhere. Not impossible. It's just more difficult. Um, the other thing is there's a lot of times with land, if it's rural, you can work with some amount of comps, although it's still a bit of an educated guess. With development, there is more of a calculation to it because of zoning ordinances and all the rest of it. The issue with land that becomes a problem is sometimes it takes a very long time to turn that piece of land over, especially if it's going to a developer. Whereas with
Mhm.
wholesaling a house, you can turn that sucker around in 2 weeks. You
Yeah.
really don't do that with land deals. Um, but I just find, and maybe it's just my engineer brain, I love studying zoning, what the requirements are, retention pond I just think that's the coolest thing, that I'm going to look at 100 acres and I'm going to see an opportunity to put down 320 houses and like put my thumbprint, so to speak, on this town that I'm working with. I just think that's neat and get paid a lot of money for it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. That's incredible, and like I said, I've done some land deals, and they're great. I just never saw it as I guess like a scalable business, because I'm from Ohio and land here is like dirt cheap. Like I've had two deals where people just gave me their lots for free.
Mm.
So like I've never seen it personally be like that. But then I go down to Houston, I see people in Houston and Florida and North Carolina, and they're crushing it with land. So it's something that I've now started to kind of tune my mind to seeing more possibility with, for sure. And
So
so
part of the thing is that it depends on what type of land you're doing. If you're doing
Mhm.
individual vacant lots, there's not a lot of meat on that bone. Usually it's like a 5 grand assignment fee, which is fine. Like you might as well do it.
Yeah.
There's not typically a lot of pain points with somebody with a vacant lot because cutting the grass and the property taxes is basically nothing. Which you can really start to scale on is when you get into big plots of land. I'm talking like 50 and 100, 200 acres, because then it's the
uh,
same thing like multifamily. It's the same stuff. You're just adding zeros.
and you mentioned turnaround time. I noticed things regarding zoning that go into those types of deals. If you have to change zoning, what else goes into those projects to actually get them to be able to be sold to buyers?
Yeah. So the main things that you're really trying to figure out is you're trying to find out the amount of land that's buildable. So do we have stuff that's in a floodplain or a wetland? Can you mitigate any of that stuff? So you're solving some of those. There was one piece of land I was working on where it looked like the whole area was covered in wetlands. We actually spent money to do a new wetland survey to find
Hmm.
out there's no wetlands out there, basically. Those are the little things you have to do.
Hmm.
You got to figure out where the underground utilities are, where are the water mains, the gas mains, where's the sewer. Call up the city and ask them what kind, like how long would this take to rezone it? Um, and so once you have that information gathered, then a developer is really going to pay attention to you. But suffice it to say, everybody, there is not a single land development deal that I've done. Okay, and I've made six digits on several of these things. None of them have taken less than 6 months to complete from contract to close.
And so, are you getting all the surveys and zoning and utilities prepared to be able to sell to a buyer? Like, are you doing all of that work up front and then marketing it to your buyers, or are you showing the buyer the opportunity first and then, if need be, doing those enhancements to the land?
The great thing about this is, particularly with you have to think about with developers and builders, what are they incentivized to do? These guys want to be out there with the bulldozers, building stuff, making it happen. They're
Hmm.
not incentivized to backdoor us. Wholesalers kind of get paranoid about this because we're thinking about other wholesalers basically stealing the deal from us.
Yeah.
Okay. Developers and builders are not incentivized like this. They don't want to do this. They don't want to go find the opportunities. They want good ones to be brought to them. So I can build a relationship with a developer very fast and just say, here's a demo of another email I sent to another developer they closed. This is the type of information you're going to get. And they look at it and they go, oh my God, if you sent me this packet and you've done this kind of research, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I'll tell you what I want to pay for it, and you go gather it up. Like you can basically pre-sell these things a lot easier to builders and developers.
That's incredible. And then, and so, how are you finding these developers? Are you just going online or like public records and just seeing who's buying in throughout the the neighboring the neighboring area?
A lot of times you can go onto the MLS, look for new construction, and if you see a cluster of new houses, there's a good chance you can call that up. And it's a developer builder. They're doing both. Remember,
Hmm.
builders and developers are not the same thing. Sometimes they will do both on a smaller scale, but somebody like D.R. Horton or Lennar, they're the two largest house builders in the country, and that's the key. They're house builders. They're not developers. So what I might do sometimes if I see them operating in a certain area and I've got like 200 acres. It's monstrous. Okay, whatever it is. I might call up one of those guys and say, hey, I know you all are operating in this area. I also know that you guys aren't particularly interested in buying raw land now. You want finished lots. Do you have a local developer that you could connect me with who you like working with? And I'll put this in their hands. And sometimes they'll do it, and sometimes they want to be directly involved. The other way that I'll do it is sometimes you do find entities that you're just like, I don't know who the heck these guys are, but they obviously have a lot of money if they bought this thing. And you just call up the buying agent and say,
Yeah.
hey man, is your client looking like some of the best buy? I just got off the phone call with a buddy of mine today. I helped him do a land deal a while ago. He made a bunch of money off of it. He loved it. He thought it was the coolest thing also. He just locked down his own deal, made 140K off of it. And that's what he did. He went and found an agent who's like, this is the entity I work for. Let me introduce you. And he basically calls this guy up and says, where do you want to buy? He's like, here's the cities we want to buy in. Find us land that meets this criteria. Well, he cold calls the heck out of these places for a while, finds the land, says, what do you want to pay for it? And he kind of has the same moment that I do of going, oh my God, I can't believe what they're about to pay. Locks up the deal. And I mean, he struggled with it. He fought for it, but a few months later, he got it. He, got that check cleared.
That is incredible, guys. That is how you do land. So if they have land deals in Texas, they know who to reach out then to, right?
Yeah,
Is it?
like I'm
Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna do a big blitz because when I was talking to him today and I said, one of the things that I think I need to do better, and I'm going to, and I'm gonna be unstoppable. I'm gonna go find like the best buyers out there, like
Yeah.
the foreign investors, India, Mexico, where all the big guys who just want to park money somewhere. I'm gonna go find them. So yeah, call me back after about 6 months, and I'll have a pretty big network of buyers in Texas for land, and they do not pay a small amount of money.
I love it. I love it. What's the marketing side look like in your business? Are you guys? I know you said you start off cold calling and you mentioned inbound. Are you guys strictly just doing inbound at the moment, or are you guys doing a mix of both?
Right now, for what it seems to me, is that if you're doing outbound marketing, you are really screwed if you're in a major metro like a Houston or a Dallas or a San Antonio. It's just you and 10 million of your closest friends are cold calling. You can get away with it if you're in a tertiary market, maybe not a secondary, but tertiary markets. You can probably do cold calling, especially if you're the only game in town. There's a couple of guys. There's one guy like he's in the Dakotas. He's the only game, and he can cold call everyone. And one out of five calls, he gets a deal. It's crazy. You're in Houston, ain't. So it's a race to get to inbound as fast as you can. So we used to have like 5 cold callers. We've since let them go, switched everything to inbound through PPL, PPC, and direct mail. That's what's working for us.
Mm.
Now, on the land side, I'm going to be generating this list this week that I'm going to attack because I have a developer who wants specific areas, and now I have these other buyers that want land in different spots. The land guys respond. The land guys don't get quite as much marketing, so they will respond to cold calls and direct mail.
The sellers, you mean the sellers for these lands?
Yes, I'm sorry. The sellers of the land will respond to cold calls and direct mail.
Okay, got you. And I hear some people that what they do with land is they just mail offers. What's your stance on that? Are you just mailing offers, or are you having conversations with them to eventually lead to that, like how you do traditionally?
So it depends on what I term the grade of land is. If this is raw land, rural, out in the middle of nowhere, there's some mentorships out there that I think do a phenomenal job. Sumner Healy is one of the guys. He's made a big name for himself. Aaliyah, I know there's a couple other guys. They do the check mailers. That one works fantastic. Their exit strategy makes a lot of sense. I like the check mailers. We use check mailers on houses. It gets a good response.
Yep.
But one of their premises is that they will adjust their purchase price, but they're usually doing like 50 cents on the dollar or something around there, and they might move it around or whatever. When you're getting into development grade land where somebody knows they're near a city limit, they know it's growing, and maybe they've even seen some people sell, you really can't send them offers at 50 cents on the dollar and make it work. They really do need someone to talk to them because of the long duration that it's going to take to buy that piece of land. Most of those sellers are kind of old school. So if I'm going to convince somebody they need to hang on with me for 6 months, they really need to hear my voice. And I can get a lot closer to maximum value. I don't need a 50% cut because if
Hmm.
I get, imagine if somebody owns 200 acres and my buyer wants to buy it for 40 grand an acre and the seller wants 38 grand an acre. Oh no, $2,000 an acre. Well, times 200 and it makes a huge difference. So
Yeah,
I'd rather be closer.
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And out of the marketing channels that you're doing for inbound, right? You mentioned PPC, PPL, and direct mail. Which one are you seeing the most effective in your business?
So also what it seems to me is that PPL providers seem to have markets that they're good in and certain markets they're bad in. So we've tested certain PPL providers in Houston. There's only a couple who we've actually been successful with, and so we've retained them.
Okay.
PPC takes a lot of effort. It takes some knowledge. It takes kind of constant adjusting, which is why you do the PPL because they're supposed to be adjusting those to get better quality leads. The problem with PPL is you really don't know all the time where they're getting it from. I could have sworn I got some cold call leads yesterday. I'm a little irritated about it. At least PPC, you know where it's coming from, but it is up to you to dial in that marketing.
Mhm.
Direct and the other nice thing that happens is if somebody's responding to a PPC, they've again done what we've talked about, where they've thought about thinking about it, they thought about it, and now they've taken the action. And so that being said, on my PPL leads, if it was destined to be a contract, if that lead was it, I'm typically getting that locked up within 72 hours. It is that fast, which
Yeah.
is why everybody tells you if you're running those campaigns, you got to jump on that thing immediately when it shows up. Do not screw around with it. On direct mail, it's a little bit different. So we're sending out direct mail, and what we're finding is that's a nurture time of about 30 to 60 days, which is fine because now you've gotten ahead of it and you have a new lead source because they're not responding to websites, they're not searching for it or whatever. But the deals that we've taken down from direct mail, that has been their average duration from the time they call us and say, I'm thinking about it, to the time they're actually ready to go, 1 to 2 months.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Awesome. And then what about the people side, who do you have on your team right now?
So right now we have I head up acquisitions and lead management. I actually do that myself. One because because actually it's really good content for my sales coaching. Like I want to be razor sharp, and the only way you do that is by staying on the phones.
Right.
One other guy on our team, his name's Andrew Arriaga. He's actually my first student, so he's actually my backup on the calls. So if I have a seller who's maybe uncooperative, maybe a low ball, whatever. He's like my backup acquisition guy, but he does all
Mhm.
of our dispo and he watches over the rehabs. Then Regina White is our other business partner, and she's the integrator. She's actually funny enough. She's kind of the visionary and integrator of the group. So she kind of sees like this is what needs to happen, and then she tries to put the processes together for us. We're actually going to be working with Gary Harper over the next few days, who's a big name in business processes. Anybody who doesn't know Gary Harper, you should reach out to him if you're having struggles with your systems. And then we have one other guy named Omar. He's a project manager. So for some of our fix and flips that are, south of $300,000 ARV, he will run the contractor and then list it for us.
Awesome. Awesome. So it sounds like you had the acquisitions, then you have somebody on dispo, and then somebody that's more like that operational side of the business, which is Regina.
Correct.
Awesome. Awesome. And so with you, being a sales coach and having so much experience in having these types of conversations with sellers, what are your tips for bringing on salespeople into your company or to anybody's company if you were to be asked advice for it?
Very first thing is it's I don't want to say like oh, everything's about mindset because I think people are throwing around that word a little bit too much. I
Hmm.
think it's more of what is the role of an acquisition or lead manager or closer? What is the position we should be taking? And this is why I keep preaching to everybody. Be a real estate doctor. Be more interested in diagnosing the problems they have and then prescribing the right medicine. When I do that and I figure out the problem and I understand, the seller realizes I understand the problem better than everyone else and maybe even better than they realized before. And that's why they trust me. So when I offer a creative deal, we're done.
Right. That's where the real rapport is built, and actually asking the right questions that make you seem or sound like an authority.
Right. I don't
Yeah.
build rapport off asking what their dog's name is and what their favorite TV show is. I build rapport when they say, this guy understands what I'm facing and I think he can help. That's the rapport I can build. And so when I give people kind of that permission to do that, and then I show them, here's how you ask questions to diagnose, people get great results immediately. They're like, oh my God, like this is night and day. My questions changed, and now these people will talk to me.
Awesome. So it's just a shift in mindset from just asking, I guess, being like a setter to actually being like what you mentioned, like a doctor, somebody that's actually like trying to really find the real impact and has an intention behind it.
I mean, I think a lot of investors join up because a lot of them do have good intentions that they want to help people, but they've never been taught how to do it. They were
Right.
just handed a script and said, well, just follow the script and, everything will be fine. It's like, go back to the medical analogy. It'd be like if you're a surgeon and I just said, here's your tools, go do a heart transplant. You're like, what do I even do with these things? You have to know how to wield the tools properly in order to make progress and do this thing correctly. And so a
Right.
lot of people come to me and they're like, Jeff, I've gone through like 12 different scripts. I don't even understand what questions I'm supposed to be asking. And those are the people I'm helping.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. What is your why?
What is my why? Um, my why is that I don't want to I don't want to get towards the end of my life and realize I left everything out on the field. I don't want to look back and say, this is what I could have been, and I decided not to do it because I was uncomfortable.
Awesome. And is there a point in your life that made you really realize that? Was that through real estate or is that just through life in general?
Um, there were some instances in my life that just really hit me across the face pretty hard, and kind of got up from that and said, I'm going to get hit in the face plenty in life. That's not the thing that I'm going to get rid of. I
Mhm.
can either sit down and just quit, or I can get back up, take another beating maybe, but kind of do a bit of Rocky and just keep absorbing the punches until they just glance off of me and I win.
And so, what has been throughout your entrepreneurship journey? What has been the number one lesson that you have personally learned in regards to leadership?
In regards to leadership, I actually learned this within the Middle East, and it's communication. So in the Middle East, I was telling you about, you got 12 different cultures converging in one spot, and none of them have English as their first language. It could be the second, third, even fourth. And so if you're trying to communicate an idea to somebody, you have to communicate it in a way that anyone can access, that a fifth grader can understand, which is the same way that I close deals. That if I can make you understand a complex topic and you walk away going, yeah, man, I freaking nailed it. Now I know that I've done a good job. And so whenever I had people working for me, that's the way I would intend to train them. And I'd get them to repeat it back to me in practice, because it's not about the amount of time that you spend doing something. It's about the amount of reps that you did. Which is faster, 10,000 reps in a week or 10,000 reps in a year? Which one gives you experience faster?
It was a very sad day when I realized that the amount of time you spend towards something does not equal success. And I see a lot of people, and I am victim of this myself, in my beginning journey, where I was putting in the hours. I was putting in a lot of hours. Yeah, me too. I was putting in a lot of hours, days, all day, all night. And I was doing everything in the least efficient way. And I think a lot of people, and if they have no mentorship, they kind of fall into that hole. And it was at the end of the day, you think that, oh, because I worked so hard, I'm doing something. But at the end of the day, if it takes me uh 2 hours to make 100 dials versus you takes you 6 hours to make 100 dials because you've been can dialing this entire time, who actually wins, right? So another question I wanted to ask you was the same question about leadership, but in regards to more so entrepreneurship. Can you make a distinction between what's the best piece of advice that you have learned yourself in regards to business building and entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship is incredibly hard. I think that is the lesson that a lot of people are not ready for when they enter into this. It is unbelievably hard. Um, but as you pointed out, also, you know, I definitely got trapped into you know, I'm doing things, but because I know I'm not doing it right, then I'm not doing anything at all. And that's not right either. There is something where you just got to try iterations and
Mhm.
improve every time you try the thing. Like right now, I'm going to pull another list of land. I got stuck on it yesterday. I was like, this isn't efficient. I don't like it. Well, at least tried and then learned this doesn't work particularly well. Let me try something else. That's what you got to do. And you got to do it a lot of times to figure it out. So be okay that it's going to take a while. As
Yeah.
far as like the distinction between entrepreneurship and leadership, entrepreneurship is you are casting the vision and then trying to get everybody to see the grander focus of what the future holds. That's not just today and tomorrow, it's next year, but you have this vision of where you're trying to go. And then as a leader, I don't want to say it's more like it's the day-to-day thing, but it is more of a nurturing aspect. I can be an entrepreneur and have a COO and not care about anything else. I just got to understand the vision. But if I'm a leader of people, I need to help them understand it and I need to nurture and grow them in a huge way. There was a great quote that, there's a kind of this tale about training. It's like a CEO is talking with a COO or something. COO was like, what if we train all these people and they all leave? And the other guy responds like, what if we don't train all these people and they stay? That's the essence to me of leadership.
I love that. I love that. So it leads me to my next question, and you've kind of already answered it, but just to kind of sum it up, if you were to have somebody that's just getting into real estate or just getting into entrepreneurship in general, and you wanted to give them the top three skills, for them to really focus on building throughout their journey, what would those three skills be?
Yeah. First thing is go network like a crazy person and ask people the real questions. What is this like? What does the day to day? You may like think about if you entered this business and you realize 6 months in, like, wow, I hate this. I wish somebody had warned me. This sucks. Like there is nothing wrong with getting into this, being super interested, and go work for somebody for 6 months or a year and find out what the real deal is. That'll
Yeah.
teach you so much. You may decide you hate it. You may decide you love it. And you get to see all the different product lines that are out there. It's not all flipping houses. People didn't even know flipping land was a thing, right? And
Yeah.
now it's becoming more mainstream. The second thing I would teach them to do is you have to be good at your conversations. You need to learn to listen, to take mental notes, and without as much bias, because I am a sales coach, you do have to learn sales. You have to learn this. There is not a role out there where sales does not come into play. Because if you can't communicate and
100%.
understand their needs, you can't function in any of this. You just can't. Whether you're acquisition, dispo, a transaction coordinator, a lender, somebody running a car wash, it does not matter. You have to be able to learn to sell and understand the problems that you are solving. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere. And then number three, when you get into this, there is something good to be said that if you have a good deal, the buyers will come. Okay. That is not untrue. However, what a lot of people did though is they went to try and find a deal and then they had no buyers to talk to.
Yeah.
This is wrong too. So you do have to do these things simultaneously, because there was a while there, and you might have been in it, where remember when the hedge funds were buying at just absurdly high values?
Yep.
It wasn't even about having a good salesman on your team anymore. It was about who had the big fish on their side who was buying at 110% ARV. Like it was unbelievable at that time. So you
Hmm.
do have to have these things simultaneously. Get your buyers and build those relationships, in conjunction with rule number one.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. I love that. Where do you see yourself in what goals do you have, say, for the next 3 years, either
So
for
over the
yourself
next,
or in your business?
yeah, so for the next 3 years for the business, we would like to consistently be doing house flips in Houston. Probably would rather be more on the lending side, to be honest with you, because that's tough to keep that machine going. It's a lot of work. So in
Hmm.
3 years, I hope we will be more in the land development space again, either helping developers identify parcels of land, negotiate those because I love it so much, and also in the land subdivide space where we're generating notes, because then again, it's more of the moving paper around rather than trying to do improvements and fix and flip. That's what we're good at.
Awesome. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Hopefully, sipping margaritas in Hawaii or something, or Costa
Yeah.
Rica is pretty nice. So we'll,
Yeah.
we'll see how that dream forms.
And then what about the business side? Anything regarding that?
As far as the business side, it's hard to say what a 10-year vision is. I certainly hope by the time that has happened that we have hired, some more higher level management who are really running the operation side, and that I can be putting most of my focus into just constantly raising private money, constantly building the network with our buyers, whether they're developers or the large, land investors or other guys. But I'm not looking to be a billionaire. I'm not looking to, stand side by side with Grant Cardone and stuff. I think the goals that those other guys have are amazing. It's just not what I want for myself.
I love that. And so this is my last question for the day. If you could go back to when you first got started in real estate, is there anything that you would tell yourself at that time?
What would I tell myself? I actually would have told myself to go work for some other entities first, and to understand the business model better and what they do and what their functions are. Some businesses are open to this, that they know you're trying to compete with them eventually, and some businesses are not open to this. So I'd be a little careful about that. Now, the thing is, when I joined some communities, like the whole idea of teams and working in this group, that wasn't even an option. It wasn't even open. But if I could zip back and somehow land in this exact moment, that's what I would do. I would start working for teams that were highly successful, that were doing deals consistently. I would learn from them. I would learn what the products were that were out there, whether it's houses, land, multifamily, industrial, commercial, whatever it is. Figure out exactly which one I resonated with. And once I understood that, then go all in and just pedal to the metal for the next year of finding buyers, raising money, and then being a marketing pro.
I love that. And that's such a cheat code too, working for somebody else. Such a cheat code.
It is. It is.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Jeff, it was incredible having you on the podcast. I took myself a lot of notes, so you guys knew that this was, very, very helpful and insightful to me. Just hearing everything you had to say regarding sales and especially land, it was a joy to truly have a conversation with you about this. Where can people find you? Whether they want to
The
just
best
connect
place,
with you or for sales coaching.
yeah, the best place to find me, guys, is on my Instagram. It's jeffsmith.rei, jeffsmith.rei. Best place you can find me. You can also check out my YouTube channel. There's links there, but it's Coach Jeff dash REI. I know, very clever. And if you guys are interested in training, I have a free training community for you guys in school for your initial callers, for your lead managers, how to set up follow appointments. If you want the level up and like, hey, Jeff, I need to be closing deals, I have a paid community. It's called REI Closer School. They're learning all the stuff to be real estate doctors. They're closing more deals and better deals. And it's been a lot of fun to have it. And I invite anybody who's there, go join the free community first, check out the value. And if you're interested after that, shoot me a DM and I'll tell you what's in Closer School.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'll have all that stuff in the description for everybody to check out. Jeff, it was a pleasure again to have you. Guys, this was the Real Tales podcast. I'll see you next time.